This episode of the Old Dogs REI Network is brought to you by Mino Studio.
In a world where jobs are how most people make money, one man, one desire, one challenge dares to break the mold. Welcome to the Old Dogs REI Network, where we don't work for money. Money works for us. Coming soon. Viewer discretion advised.
Welcome to the Old Dogs REI Network, where cash flow is king. Real estate investing, the means, so you can enjoy your retirement dreams. This is the show where we cut right to the chase. No sales pitch, no long monologues, just simple how-to real estate investing advice, so you can earn the passive income you need to enjoy your retirement today. And now, your host and chief old dog, Bill Manicero.
Welcome to the Old Dogs REI Network. I'm your host, Bill Manicero, and this is the show where 50-plussers and anyone else who wants to join us get solid, no sales pitch real estate investing advice to help generate real cash flow. This podcast airs twice weekly on Mondays and Fridays, and if you aren't already a subscriber, go to iTunes, type in Old Dog, spelled D-A-W-G, find our podcast and subscribe. Well, we've got a great show for you today. This is an area that we definitely don't talk about enough. In fact, I think very, very little over the 200 plus episodes we've done. So I am really stoked here. I'll probably be asking questions based on my own personal needs, just as well as I'm sure things that'll appeal to you guys. But our guest today is John Matheson, and John's been a real estate developer and investor for over 30 years. Yes, you guessed it, he's also an old dog with us. He is the CEO of Commercial Loan Success, a software and educational platform designed to help small business owners and property investors make more informed financial decisions. He is also the managing member of J. Healy Development, LLC, a company that specializes in developing new projects into sustainable properties. John has been involved in transactions for developing, permitting, and/or financing of completed projects totaling over $50 million. Through his Commercial Loan Success loan analysis software platform, he helps commercial borrowers and commercial lenders to communicate more effectively, where borrowers are able to approach commercial lenders more confidently, already knowing that their transactions are lendable. He also hopes that through Commercial Loan Success, he can provide resources and educational materials to help small business owners, entrepreneurs, and real estate investors to confidently obtain financing and grow their businesses profitably, all without being at the mercy of the predatory lenders. Well, John, welcome to the Old Dogs REI Network.
Oh, my pleasure to be here.
It's great having you on, and you've got a great story to tell. I'm really looking forward to sharing with our audience here. First, maybe just give us kind of an overview of your background. How did you end up in real estate? Where did you come from? That kind of thing, and how did you end up where you are today?
Well, that's one of the funny things about being an old dog, right? I'm listening to you on the intro, and I'm like, gee whiz. I got to shorten that up. and when you do business as long as you and I have, I guess you just have more to talk about. It's kind of funny where you end up in. My wife has the most fun with this because, all of us in business are trained, right? We're supposed to have our quick elevator script. And when I was a real estate developer as just solely what I did, it was easy. It's like one or two sentences. And, now when you add software into it, how do you blend? Oh, I'm a real estate developer and I'm a software developer. And how do you say that easily in an elevator script? And here's what she says, which is great. She says, he's a real estate developer and a software developer, so he's out of my hair all day.
I like that. Let's hope he keeps busy. No,
That's right. That's right. So that's it. So yeah, I mean, like you said, I'm one of the founders of the Commercial Loan Success software. I'm also a commercial real estate developer and property investor, like many people who are on the call. And you gave some context of my background. The numbers do get big when you do stuff for 30 years for sure. But I've been through 3 recessions in my career too. And I'm happy not to be here today talking about how to survive the 4th, right?
Right.
So I think we all feel like we have a nice run here. We're currently involved at Jay Healy in quite a bit more permitted property. And it's not going to surprise you or anybody in the audience that I have arranged many millions of dollars of commercial bank and private lender financing along the way either. And, after listening to you in your podcast, Bill, I figured you would ask me, how did I get to this place in my career? How did I get to being a real estate developer who has a software app?
Yeah, I mean, that's really it. Did you ever buy like a home for rent or something? Or did you ever flip and fix? Or, I mean, where did you start?
Hey, no different than any of us on the call. And I did start at a young age. I had a background in real estate sales in my early 20s, and I just always had the goal of wanting to be the real estate developer. So I guess my goal was specific. I just didn't want to own some investment property. I wanted to be the developer. And to do that, I knew I had to learn the business inside and out, but I also had to learn how to get financing, both institutional and private. So like everybody, I mean, I learned by doing. My first transaction as a principal was small. I'm going to say it was around a building lot for $30,000
Wow.
on which we put a house. And then we sold the house for like 2.25. And what was great though, is I got a construction loan from a commercial bank, and it was at prime plus 2 interest when I did it. And since we're on a nice old dog show, this is fantastic because a lot of our listeners will remember that when you do go back into, the late 80s, early 90s, interest rates were not 3 and 4 like they are.
No, they're like,
Prime plus 2 was 9.
yes, exactly. Yeah. No, you're talking double digit, sometimes up in the 20s, right?
I remember going to developer council meetings, Bill, when I was, younger in my 30s and probably early 90s, and having a guy say at the meeting who was an experienced developer say, the economy runs at 10%, fellas. And you'd all sit there and it's like, so you learned how to make money paying a lender double digits, and how to profit over the top of that. And that's a skill set that's a mindset and a skill set that's not taught today. Today, it's the lower the interest rate, the better. But in reality, it's more, the accessibility of the money is just as important, provided you have enough profit in the transaction and you can keep moving. And so those were the type of things that I learned. I mean, the small transactions are fantastic. They can form the foundation for your business, and they're the stepping stone to increase your portfolio over time. We've all done that. But to advance to the next level and to get into the larger properties, and I would imagine you're no exception with your investing business, it's something that most of us in this business aspire to, is to get to the larger properties. You need to level up into legitimate commercial financing space to do it. So as I sold that first house, we bought some more building lots. We kept moving. I went down to the bank. I said, hey, I did well on this one. How about another one? Each time it started getting bigger. And before I knew it, my bank credit line was in the 7 digits, and, we were able to level up. So for me, that meant commercial banking in earnest. This is nothing to be afraid of if you've never done it, but the process is not as difficult as it can sound. But if you have done it, you do start to understand better how to navigate it. And like anything, you understand how it works and how to fit in. But let's face it, what always frustrated me, probably you and anybody else out there, and from when I started all the way up to a few years ago before I got involved in our software, was the unpredictability of the bank process, right? I mean, it always seemed like the bank process was kept a mystery. Sure, we could all learn ratios and some formulas, but you never really knew if they would do the transaction the way you needed it. And let's face it, if you can work with a commercial bank lender, they are the source of the best rate and terms, especially when compared to the expense of private capital or online lenders. But you also can't really afford to be out the due diligence time, money, deposits, only to find out your regulated banker can't do your deal.
Right. I mean, the first loan of yours, I would imagine, was that difficult, or did you have some help there? Because you didn't really have experience developing land before.
No, and the thing of it is, and here's here's where we'll segue right into how do we solve this problem today with software. All of us, when you go for a commercial bank loan, do what? We put together a little business plan. We'll write an executive summary. We'll attach the numbers that are pertinent to the transaction. If it's to be built, it's a pro forma. If it's existing, we're going to have whatever existing data we have. And we'll put together a nice package and we'll bring it down to the bank. And we'll meet somebody and we'll do our pitch, or we'll send it over online and we'll do our pitch. And then what happens, Bill? We wait.
That's exactly right.
And we wait.
And they ask for more stuff.
Right. And they ask for more stuff. So let's solve this today with software. The first thing that we need to realize is let's study the commercial bank business as property investors and see how it really works. And one of the things about commercial mortgages is, for the most part, even though the banks don't tell you this, the underwriting of the transaction side, the property side, is fairly straightforward. There's a fantastic book out, to geeks like me who love to study financing, right? There's a fantastic book out called Commercial Mortgages 101. Michael Reinhardt wrote it, and in it he was a banker himself, and he breaks down commercial banking, and he basically says, in one page, what it is that the commercial bank needs to be able to actually underwrite your property side of the transaction. And it's really three things. If we're dealing with cash flow property, they need our net operating income. So what is the expenses? What is the income minus the expenses on the property? They need to get a capitalized value or an appraisal on the property so that they kind of know what it's worth and they can put it into their loan to value formulas. And then finally, they need to know what the debt service coverage ratio is. And what that is just the amount of cash flow that you have over the top of your mortgage payment each month. And banks like you to have 1.25 or more on top of all that. And a lot of this stuff, you guys all know this. I mean, this is all stuff that's there. But when you think of it in those simple terms, if that's all they really want to begin the underwriting side, we all know what they're going to now do next after they get that. They're going to look at us as the sponsor. And they're going to say, they're going to want all the things that they want from us as the sponsor in the transaction. But if all they want are those three things up front, why don't we change the conversation with them and just give them that? And then say to them, hey, here's the things you want. Would you like to continue the conversation with me on this property? And that's exactly what our software does.
Well, that's great. So it actually prints out like a mini report, or is it a one-pager, or that it has all the right numbers on it that they need?
Absolutely. So how I got involved in it is classic. So like anybody else that's out there who's doing transactions, you end up, you come through the recession and you're looking for lending, and, some of your lenders aren't still standing. So I had a transaction that I needed to do a refinance on, and I was having a hard time finding a bank that was willing to do it. My bank was actually merging with another bank. I'd been with them for like 15 years. And they said, we're going to merge. We'd like you to see if you can get this loan out of the bank.
Really? So wow.
Lovely, right?
Yeah, that's really interesting. I've never had that happen.
Yeah, right. Well, that's the thing. Like you said, when you're in this game long enough, right? Things happen. So I started to network toward a resolution, and like everybody, when you're looking for a new bank, Googling, for me, Googling online and then putting in my social security number and financials for an online lender just wasn't going to happen. It's just not something I was ever going to be comfortable doing. So, a lot of us at this age, right, we're relationship guys. We network to a resolution. And I had some commercial agents refer me to my now partner in commercial loan success software, Dan Crowley. And Dan is a commercial banker by trade. He is a bank consultant. He's been doing it for 30 to 35 years. And he is one of the most heartfelt entrepreneurs that you'll ever meet. And when I first met him, he was so busy. When I called him the first time, his voicemail was full. That's how busy he was, right? So, but he calls right back and he's like, hey, so you called, and we arranged to meet each other to talk about my transaction at a local diner, right? Now, listen, Bill, all of us at our age shouldn't be in a diner, right? And there's Dan and I, our sausages, bacon, eggs. It's just like, good thing the doctor's not there, right? And he brings his laptop. And I'm like a mess because for me, I've never, had challenges like I was having trying to get financing. And I just wasn't, I'd call the banks up and they were kind of warm and fuzzy or they just weren't committed. And I'm trying to build the new relationships. And it's just, I wasn't getting to where I needed to be. And I was frustrated. And, there's a level of angst that goes with it. And let's face it, when you're doing commercial bank borrowing, be it you, me, or anybody, the best case scenario for even the most experienced person going in is there's always a little level of nervousness. Are they going to do it? To the worst case scenario, which is absolute dread, right? I mean, nobody has said to me over the years, oh, I love the process.
Right. Tell me about it.
So I'm sitting with Dan, and he's got this laptop, and he pops it open, and he says, all right, give me your income and expenses on the property. So I'm giving it to him, and he's tapping away. And he taps away for no more than 2 minutes. And he looks up at me and he says, all right, you're a go. And I said, I'm a go? And he goes, yeah, you're a go. And I go, what do you mean I'm a go? Right? And he says, oh, I've put your income and expense numbers on the property through my commercial real estate software program. And the program vets your transaction against today's common commercial bank guidelines and tells me if you're likely a stop or a go to a commercial bank application. And that's what I said. I said, wow. So now, right, I'm sitting there, Bill, and as up against it as I was personally to get my problem solved, my brain is starting to change over to what does he have in there? So I said to him, what do you mean your software? He goes, yeah, I've wrote the code. I've used this in my business for over 25 years. And what I've done with it is I've vetted over $1 billion worth of commercial property loans and or business loans for my clients.
Wow. That's really interesting.
And that's what I'm saying. Yeah. So I'm looking at him going, so I would really, Dan, I'd really like this for my computer. How do I get it? And he goes, well, you can't. And I said, what do you mean I can't? He goes, it's mine. and I'm sitting there, but I want it. And he's like, you can't have it. So I'm looking at him and I said to him, to paraphrase, I said something like, do you realize the angst I had coming here? And by you telling me I'm a go, you've relieved so much of that. You've empowered me now to feel like I can have a bank conversation with who you're going to place me with here. Do you realize that the implications that this could have for everybody in the property and business loan space who feels like I do today? And I know there's a lot of us. And he goes, oh yeah, people tell me that all the time. He goes, people hug me for what I do with the software. And I said, well, have you ever thought about, digital nationwide distribution of it? And he goes, yeah, I have. He goes, honestly, I'm just so busy. I haven't had a chance to, get it into the right platform. And, I got to figure that out. And I said, well, would you like some help with that? And he said, you know what? Sure. And that's how our partnership started. And from there forward, and that was a few years back now. And our collective goal with CLS has just been to take the mystery out of the commercial bank process and to empower every real estate investor or entrepreneur with the knowledge of the likelihood of their transaction and loan request being deemed a stop or a go by a bank before they ever speak to a lender. And, think about that for a moment. As I say to everybody, who wouldn't want to know if your numbers qualify before you speak to a lender? Who wouldn't want to know that?
Right.
And so we eliminate the type of pain that we're all in this banking process. So we make it so that, if your transactions deem viable before you apply, so you can do your financing business with a bank with confidence. And, the empowerment felt at that moment when you experience a go result, it'll be no different than how I felt from the software is what we want for everybody out there. No more wasting time on a deal that can't get fair financing.
Fascinating. Absolutely fascinating. Well, I would imagine you just getting exposure to that and seeing behind the software itself, and really understanding it like you've had to do. Obviously, you're CEO of the company, but you must have seen things like, oh man, I wish I knew this. There were. Reflecting back, did you see like mistakes that you had made that this just brought to the light? You go, oh man, if I would have done this way, I might have had that loan. Was that kind of revelation in it?
Yeah, it was. And it's happened for our old dogs out there that use it. The statements are, gee, I wish I had this, going for bank loans. And the younger users are just, they make me grin how empowered they get. We have one young guy, he's buying a 2-family. And he goes into the bank and he's got, as you said in the beginning, what our software does is you do your inputs for the financial part of your transaction, your income expenses on the property and what you're looking to borrow, your purchase price. It's all simple inputting. And then you run analysis on the software and it gives you a printout, which is a 1-page document, which we call our one sheet. And that is actually written by Dan in bank language for bankers to decipher. It's not the easiest document for us as real estate entrepreneurs to decipher. It's written in bank language, and it's designed for the banker to consume within 1 minute or less to determine whether or not they want to go forward with a discussion with you on the loan. So the young guy, he's in a download, print, and share world. He prints it out, he downloads it, prints it, and he's got it in his hand. He walks into the bank, and he's sitting with the loan officer, which, let's give him some credit. That has not been an easy thing to ever do for any of us. And he puts the one sheet on the desk and he follows what we tell him to do. And he just says, this is software that I purchased and I've got the output results. And it says that my loan is vetted against commercial bank guidelines. Would you like to continue the conversation with me? And the vice president of the bank is looking at the document and he's not speaking. And he says to the kid, where did you get this again? He says, I bought this online. It's software. And the guy says, hold on a minute. And they're in one of those banks where in the back of the bank or the second floor was the executive offices. And the guy's gone for like 10 minutes. He comes back. He brings a senior vice president.
Oh, gee.
And the senior VP sits there and he says to the guy, we've never had anybody walk in here so succinctly prepared before. For a loan, and the kid is like going to put his feet on the desk. He's like, he's doing a testimony first. He's like, I'm feeling pretty good right now.
That's great. That's great.
It is great. So it's changing the conversation, Bill, and that's what we were all about. Is all of us think about when you went for your commercial loan and you're sitting there. It's like now we want to go in, we want to take our one sheet. And we want to give them, there's still some human psychology to this. If you and I talk to any banker today, they're going to tell us, oh no, we want to lend to you. It's their business. It's how they make money. They need us, especially qualified borrowers and opportunities. These are transactions they want to do. So what they tell us, the bankers give us amazing feedback about the software with being a prepared borrower. And, they'll make statements to us like, the problem tends to be we get bad raps because we deny loans, but really borrowers come in, they're not properly prepared or they have improper expectations of the process. And with this software now, they're prepared, the expectations are clear, and it's psychology too from our end as borrowers because we feel good. We put it in front of them. They know we have options because our transactions go. And so we can sit here and say, okay, would you like to continue the conversation with us? They start to get, in a business sense, vested in our transaction. And see, once they start running numbers where they see their opportunity to lend, and do what their job is, and they're going to make money doing that, now they'll help us on the other side. When we have those things that are inside the file on sponsorship or other issues, they become vested in the file, and they're more willing to help us through that part of it than if we go in with the whole file at once and put it down and say, hey, call me, and do what? Like we started out in the beginning. We wait. I want an answer now.
Now, to develop that one sheet, though, and I'll use definitely an antiquated expression here, us old dogs know, but basically, if you have garbage in, right, you've got garbage out. What about the data that is input to create this one page? I mean, don't you have to make sure that that data is not necessarily pro forma data, but instead, you know, the real financials, the real rent rolls, or whatever, if it's a multifamily, you know, the real hardcore, you know, expense and income figures?
Couldn't agree with you more. And I love garbage in, garbage out. I use that in all of our teachings on the software. We have a robust resource area for people to use, and I get in there and tell them how I think they should use it and what's there. And, you know, if I'm going to buy a multifamily or an apartment building or a cash flowing, I don't want bad numbers from a seller anyway. Really what I want is the Schedule E. But if I'm going to put garbage into a software and I'm going to say, hey, it's a go, and I'm going to go buy it, I kind of get what I deserve. You know, the software is an analytical tool. It's only as good as the numbers that you put in it. And what the bankers have given us on feedback in the design, there's a pull down box for your data source. So you tell the banker where you got the source from.
Oh, that's great.
And let's face it, if you're a banker, are you going to accept a one sheet where the source was the seller? Mm-hmm. You know, you really are looking for a Schedule E or some kind of schedule, and you might take a CPA type of compilation, but the realtor or the seller are not going to be the greatest sources to say, yeah, let's go do a loan on. It's going to be still a trust and verify world in banking that ultimately will uncover what's really happening in that rent roll.
Right. That's great. That's a nice feature in there because, if I were a banker, and I was a banker years back, but not on the loan side, but if I were a banker evaluating, I'd get this sheet and I go, well, yeah, how do I know where these numbers came from? That, it looks great on this sheet, but that would be sort of my first thought is that they would come back and say, well, where'd you get the numbers? We
went out to a group of bankers. And we had 20 or so of them in there doing beta testing for us in the beginning. And we had them issue the feedback. And one of the things we said to the bankers is, hey, take live transactions that you're doing now. Put them in, see if the software algorithms say the same thing that your underwriter does. And then, the phone rings. Wow, it really does work. The carve-outs are right on. This is fantastic. It's funny they call it. It's like, and of course, this is Dan, right? Dan knows exactly what it is that they need for algorithms, carve-outs, and metrics to be able to move it forward. And they're always, like I said, they're always going to verify everything. But to get the conversation into an accept or pass mode for the banker, we as business owners and entrepreneurs don't have time to go through the process for a couple of months to get told no. We need to be able to find out up front, are you interested in pursuing this with me? Yes, no. And if you're not, it's like the barber in a busy city barber shop. Somebody gets a haircut and he comes back and he gets out of the chair and the barber's got the person coming up and the guy says to him, hey, you didn't cut it short enough. And the barber just says, next.
Yeah, just a quick question for you too, and this is again I don't want I mean the software sounds great, but I'd like to again get more into your personal experiences with investing and dealing with the banks and so forth. So what would you say are some of the most common mistakes that people make that go into a bank seeking out a commercial loan? That are things that maybe we don't know. Maybe they're obvious, or maybe they're things that we would know. Maybe just a few key mistakes that would be reoccurring with people seeking lending.
No, this is an awesome question. Babson College did a study a few years back with people going in for commercial loans and getting something like 50% of what they ask for. So if you go in and you ask for $200,000, you're getting $100,000. And obviously level of frustration there from business owners as to why that is. But business owners that got educated on the banking process were getting something like 30% more. So they were almost getting like 80% of what they asked for as a group. So the biggest thing that I think happens is that when you go into the mystery, and the bankers do a great job of keeping it a mystery. They really do. I mean, you can get into places for commercial credit where you can get denied and they don't even tell you why.
Right.
So I'll sit there, do you know why? It's just, they may not. I mean, it's just they have different metrics bank to bank in commercial credit versus in the real estate mortgages where the underwriting tends to be fairly predictable on the property side and it's more variable on the sponsor side. So when you go into the bank, the first mentality that I think you need to have is to be prepared. And that's where we try to help you with simple software tools. We are in an era now where, I mean, you and I started, we didn't have a cell phone, remember? And I tell all the kids today that I mentor, signed, sealed, delivered on a contract meant it. There was a white, a canary, and a pink copy, and you had to peel them all off. And you literally delivered it to people because that's what it meant. It's not today.
I remember when you had to have carbons in between those.
Remember? And it's like I get these texts from these kids making offers on property. I'm like, I don't do business on text. Sit down, write it down. Let me see it. It's just, to marry off our era, which was the handshake in-person era, with now the technology era, we want to get simple and inexpensive tools that we can use to be able to speak the language of anybody we're doing business with, especially the lender. So
what are some specific mistakes that people make? I mean, not being prepared, that's one. What would be another?
For me, along the journey through it, and it's just you just learn by mistakes in real estate as you do it, is being underfunded is always a problem. Mm-hmm. And, if you're buying a building or you're going to do a development of land with houses, whatever it is, and you don't take enough money from the lender. And lenders, especially historically, have always been known to reduce your loan to value to as low as you'll go to be able to maximize or minimize their risk in a transaction. And when you're underfunded along the way, that's when you can make the most mistakes. And that's where, for me, I've lost the most money. Because when you don't take enough from the lender is when you're more likely to end up in problems. You don't have a contingency built in, you're underfunded. And one of the things I love about the software is it allows us now, as a buyer even, to go into a property and say to the seller, hey, based on the numbers you gave me, I can't borrow enough against your property to get 75 or 80% LTV. I'd have to put more cash in to hit your price, so I can only offer you this. And if you want to argue with me, it's just not me, it's software.
Right.
It's kind of neat. And it's the same thing selling. When I flip it over and sell, hey, I know you can get this kind of loan against property. So you use it both ways, but you never getting underfunded. Bill, for me, was always just if I think back on just the things that annoyed me the most and had the situations where I lost, it was right there, because then you just don't have enough money to do what you wanted to do with a property and you make mistakes.
Yeah, that's a big one and a common one that I hear of as well. Just, people think, well, cash flow is going to pay for the capital improvements I have to do. And man, you just realize, gee, I've got to go out and get another loan now. I could have done it along with the initial mortgage,
Yeah. And with the software, see, we've designed it where you can fit in the private lender along with the commercial bank and disclose it to everybody. So you can show everyone how they can make it work, or how they can fit in to a transaction. If they're amortizing or accruing or whatever it is, you can show them. And the private lenders, I mean, they've never seen anything like this. When you walk into a private lender and say, hey, I've got a software that actually shows how I can pay you back, they just haven't, they love this.
Right. That's great. Well, our audience is, as folks that are 50 years of age and older, and some of them are approaching retirement. So they're in their W-2 job still, but they're planning for retirement, and they're a little bit, skeptical about whether or not they're going to have the funds to be able to to have the kind of retirement they want, or, for the duration that they may need. So they're looking at real estate investing as a means to be able to supplement that, or, to be able to generate what they need from a cash flow standpoint. So a lot of people are looking at different things. Some are going to buy a lot of single family homes. Some will, flip or do wholesaling. I mean, there's a lot of different directions folks may take, but there are those that will, look at a multifamily. I know 5 units or more is technically considered commercial. We've had a number of old dogs that are buying 17 unit, 22 unit, 35 unit apartments. What kind of advice would you give them that'd be encouraging for them, something practical as they would go into that next step into a commercial property? What kind of steps would be helpful?
Being in real estate the way you and I both are, we're always going to be advocates and endorse it. I think it's a great move for anybody. One of my favorite books, the Think and Grow Rich book from our generation, right? And my takeaway from that book was to build the team around you of experts at things you're not. And so if you want to buy a 20-unit apartment building, you are, as the owner, responsible for the money. So if you have the down payment, you're in good shape. If you're not, you have to get some friends and family together to help you out with it. So how do you speak to them? Well, you open the apartment screener that we have, and you put in the data, and you show everybody how their investment can work in the property. And then you're going to speak to the commercial bank, and you're an old dog. So you have experience, but you're going to be savvy enough to say, hey, I'm not going to be down there every day necessarily doing tenants and toilets. So let me hire a property manager. And once you hire a legitimate property manager, it starts to satisfy the experience requirement inside of the bank in case you're somebody who doesn't have previous experience, which is kind of the profile you gave me, somebody deciding what they're going to do. Do they want a multi-unit project? And once you've opened the screener and you've put in property management and you've put in the cost of those things, if the numbers still work and it says it's a go, here's the thing. And Dan, my partner, says this all the time about property investing, especially. If it's a good deal for the bank, right? It's a go for the bank. It's a great deal for you, because they don't lend unless it's a really good deal for them. So you hire people to do what you can't do. Make sure the numbers fit. Make sure all the numbers are good. And you can actually sit there in retirement and have a passive income stream that is a legacy play if you have children. I mean, eventually that amortizing mortgage gets paid off, and that's a legacy asset.
Right. That's great. Good information. I think some folks don't realize when they get out there, they may find a great building or maybe even a triple net deal or something, but the sponsorship part of it is always a little bit of a challenge, because that property may be worth, or for sale for $5 million or $10 million or something. I mean, those are places that the banks aren't going to fudge, right? I mean, they're going to still want that sponsor, that signer on that note that has that net worth and the liquidity to be able to, cover that property. Is that correct?
Yeah. And I mean, you get into, as the bigger the properties get, the more complicated the transaction can be, but the simpler it can be for people like me in it. It's kind of a weird dynamic how that works is, if you're somebody who stumbles into a $5 million property, it's your first or second transaction, or you've never transacted anything over $300,000 before. The lender's not wrong for saying to you, hey, dude, how do I know you can do this?
Right. Exactly.
I mean, I would say the same thing to you, lending the money. So, people like me and you who are in the community are easy to find. We advertise, we're out there, we have signage, we're local developers in our space, and we're approachable. And if you have that kind of transaction and you need the sponsor solidification side, you walk into our office, you walk into your office, and you say, hey, Bill, John, this is a pretty decent deal. I've got a CLS1 sheet that proves the validity, but you see how you speak to me. I mean, you come in, you say, the deal works, here's why. And now you look at numbers, and so you end up maybe partnering with a developer who can do it, and you get a nice piece of the cash flow yourself, which is better than not being able to do it.
Right. Great.
Because that's a big deal. I mean, a $5 million deal for someone who hasn't done it, that I can't blame the lender that day for saying, hey, yeah, the numbers work, but how do I know you know what to do when the following 10 things go wrong in the first day?
Right.
Because we know they will.
Well, how does your product work with the Fannie Freddie FHA, these other types of government backed types of loans? Does it also seek to meet the requirements for those as well?
Yeah, it begins the conversation. Exactly. It's a conversation starter for any of those. That you get more into your conduit lending in that spot. That is the $5 million and up lending world that you tend to find yourself in when you're in that space. My instincts on the software, I've seen people use it on $80 million transactions and feel comfortable that it was, metrically telling them it was correct. But commercial banking, my instincts on it, and none of this is published, it's just my own view of it. I think commercial lending starts to cut off somewhere around the $15 million mark for the standard metrics. And now you're more into, Wall Street banking. When you're doing a $20 million deal, it's nobody has that necessarily in the bank to offset
right,
the rainy day. That's a different level of syndication. That could be a couple of banks that get together. That could be, and that does get you into the FHA 221 D4s and those kind of programs, which the underwriting is different for, but the conversation starting is the same.
Okay, so it's sparking the interest of those that can make it happen, right?
Exactly.
Okay. Are you still active in the other development business? I mean, or you really? So is it about a 50-50 split of time, or how do you kind of devote your time to each?
Well, I mean, here's what happened to me. As the software got going, you start to affect people's businesses and lives, and you start to feel good about it. So you spend more time and stuff. And I'll give you a quick story about things that have happened with this software, which just, make you feel like, wow, I should spend more time in it. It's, I had a friend of mine who started a health services business a couple of years ago, and he, is a Ramsey guy. He's totally debt averse. He hates debt. And on the personal side of the ledger, he has none, which I tend to agree with him. It's a good platform to have, but in business, you need to use leverage to grow. So he knows that I believe this. So he comes to me and he says, hey, I need to expand. I need office space. I need to hire staff. I've got a lot of people I can help and serve and get better. How do I do it? So I used our actual business loan screener for him and got the result. And he was a go, and showed him how he could go down to the bank and get a credit line for his business. And I didn't hear from him for a few months. And this is a guy who, if us old dogs had abs like this guy, we'd be really happy. I mean, he is in top shape, right? So he sends me this text, and all it says is, my fat pants are loose. And I'm like looking at it going, what's he talking about? So then I call him, right? And I'm like, what are you talking about? And he goes, oh, I'm sorry. I should have said that. This is from a client. He goes, I've had a client come in, and because I took the credit line based on what your screener told me I was able to do, and I took the line and I got my business open, I'm now changing lives. That came from a client who's now losing weight and feels great.
Interesting.
Yeah. And you just sit there and go, all right, this is like gonna, so then you start to look at what's there, Bill, and you see there's, 17 million small businesses, according to, SBA surveys, use bank credit. And you start realizing, okay, a commercial, let it be a credit card, be it a credit line, be it something, all these people feel the way I did going to the bank. And then you get into the 3 to 6 million property owner space that's out there. And you say, well, if you're going to refinance your property, we've got the refinance screeners. If you're going to buy, sell. So yeah, I got way more into the software.
Right.
We still have around probably 400 units of multifamily mixed use property permitted. We've got some self-storage on the board, another couple hundred units. I'd like to scale with the market the way it is, and the readily available financing that we have now. I can see where we could scale ourselves to double our size in the next couple of years if we were inclined, which is really fun.
Oh, that's great. That's great. Well, neat. Well, time is like zip by here. There's some great information you've shared. And John, hopefully our folks will not only draw from this, but be able to connect with you, your company, and find out even more. This is our section right now that we call our Wrap It Up, where I ask you a series of quick questions about resources and so forth that our listeners can tap into somewhere down the road if it sounds like an area that of interest to them. So if you are ready, we can go ahead and wrap it up.
Yeah, let's do it.
All right. Favorite real estate book?
Think and Grow Rich is mine. Even though it's not really a real estate book, I just love the way that book influenced me.
Well, how about favorite business book?
You know, there's a newer book out, and it's called Never Split the Difference by a guy named Chris Voss.
I've
And
heard that.
he was an FBI hostage negotiator, and it teaches you negotiating tools that you can actually use in your real estate business. It's kind of cool.
Great. How about most valuable website for success?
Oh boy, you know, where do you go for a website? I'm not allowed to say my own, right?
Right. Exactly. But maybe there's one you tap into on a regular basis, that we're not thinking of here.
You know, I love the project management applications that are, the Slack, the Asanas, any of those out there that you can use that are, in the website world. It's all cloud-based that you can use to schedule your projects, and it works great for real estate.
Oh, that's cool. Well, that kind of transitions to the next question. Favorite app? Like on
I'll
your
tell you
phone?
what, us old dogs, right? I miss the in-person part of business. I still believe it's where it gets done. I make people meet me in a Zoom room. I use Zoom. It's the video conference software, and I want to see you.
And just hold up your phone, huh?
That's right.
That's great. That's
Yeah,
great.
I want to see you.
Yeah, that is the truth. It's like, somebody will be texting me. I'll pick up the phone and call them, and it's like, who is this? They're not used to talking to people on the phone. Everything's texting. It's crazy.
I know.
How about your favorite quote?
Oh boy. All right. I'll give you two. All right. On my wall in my office is the Matheson family motto, Fact et Spera, which stands for do and hope.
Oh, that's great. That's great.
Yeah. And there's one from FDR, which I've always had kicking around too. It's when you reach the end of your rope, tie a knot in it and hang on.
That's great. That's great. And our final question. If you lost everything you had, just pretty much wiped out your home, pretty much everything, and all you have is $1,000 in cash, how would you use that $1,000 to rebuild what you currently have?
Wow. That's a tough one. It's a different world today than when we all started. Boy, that's a great question. I suppose I would make sure I had a license to sell something like real estate or construction. I would make sure that I had a website up with a landing page where people could opt in, and I'd probably go from there. That's a really tough one. Now, if you asked me 10 years ago, what would I have done with $1,000? It's, I'll buy Uber.
Yeah, but you already know what Uber is today. That's not fair.
No.
No, back then you'd probably have to do start with some sort of, direct mail thing or something. Yeah. I don't know. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. No, something where people could opt in for sure.
Yeah. You've mentioned your software, and you sound very excited about it here. It sounds like it's got a lot of great stuff in it. I heard you had like a little special offer or something for our listeners. Is that true?
Oh, absolutely. So we can be found easily at commercialloansuccess.com. That won't surprise anybody. The name of our product being Commercial Loan Success. So we're there. But for everybody who puts up with listening to me today and stayed this long on the call, by all means, we have a free giveaway. It's at web.commercialloansuccess.com/dog, DAWG for you, Bill.
Oh.
So it's web.commercialloansuccess.com/dog. And what people will get there is free giveaway, which is chapter 2 of our upcoming book, which is Commercial Loan Success. It'll be out next month. What that chapter does is it gives people a complete walkthrough of all the things that we think you should prepare before you even begin the process of engaging a bank in a discussion.
Oh, that's great. Like a pre-approval checklist type
Checklist,
thing. Oh.
Yep. And then you also get a nice link to the software so you can see it in action and check it out. And if you want to get it at a discount, it's right there.
Great. That's great. That website that you mentioned earlier, that would be the best way people could reach you?
That tends to be the best. They get in there and they get to see everything. There's a bunch of video tutorials, and it walks them right through it, and it answers most of the questions. And there's FAQs in there with a section that gives you access to our help desk, phone numbers. It's all right there.
Wow. Well, John, this is wonderful information. Sounds like just a killer product. I'm definitely going to check it out. I hopefully will avoid some of the mistakes that I've already made one too many times. Sounds like something worth checking out here.
That's great. Thank you.
Well, we have a tradition here, as we are called the Old Dogs REI Network. You get the honor here of being able to close us out with your best old hound dog howl.
Oh, that's funny. I saw that and I practiced it before I got on, and my corgi erupted. So it might not just be me. It could be my little corgi who goes off too. But all right, I'll try.
All right, that'll do. That'll do, John. Well, thank you so much for being on. We really have enjoyed this. It's been some good information.
Bill, thank you.
I also want to thank all our Old Dog listeners out there, too, for joining us. I know there's a lot of other things you could be doing right now, but the fact that you've taken the time to join us means a lot, and we greatly appreciate it. Please note everything that John talked about here is going to be detail in our show notes located at the Old Dogs website at olddogsreinetwork.com/blog, and all the links as well that we have referenced, including the link to get the free book portion there. So just look for the episode with John Matheson. Well, that's the show for today. Remember, cash flow is king and real estate investing the means. Until next time, keep moving forward and may God bless.
Thank you very much for visiting the Old Dogs REI Network. We would greatly appreciate if you would stop by iTunes and let us know what you think of the show. We would love if you could subscribe to the podcast, give us a 5-star rating, and write a review. The more ratings and reviews we receive, the more visible the podcast will be to others. Thank you.